everybody. My name is Dave Hale. I'm the director of TechnoServe Labs, and I'm going to be the moderator for this panel discussion, where we're going to be addressing the question of how to leverage digital technology, even when farmers or other clients we're serving may not have access to a device, to data, or even to the internet. But before we begin, I'd like to introduce our panelists. So from TechnoServe, we have Seth Aim, Senior Technology Intervention Manager with the TechnoServe Benin Cashew Program in Benin. Seth, do you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Thank you, Dave.
Very good. And also from West Africa, we have Ma Oyeka, TechnoServe Program Development Manager based in Nigeria. Ma, great to have you with us.
Thank you, Dave. It's a pleasure to be here as well. Looking forward to the collaboration, the discussion, and information that will be shared on the topic. Thank you.
Looking forward to it as well. And then from Latin America, from Nicaragua, we have Giselle Aleman Ayala, who is a communication specialist with the TechnoServe MOCA program, coming to us from Managua.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be sharing with you this morning.
Great to have you with us. And then from USAID, we have Kanchana Statenmurthy with USAID program specialist, who's going to be talking to us about the USAID frameworks for digital literacy.
Hi, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. Looking forward to our discussion.
So we have 90 minutes set aside for this panel discussion. The way this is going to work is I'm going to give a short introduction to the topic and an overview of some of our findings from our work at TechnoServe. So you don't have to listen to me, I'm going to hand it over to the panelists from TechnoServe to talk about these findings in depth, and then to Kanchana at USAID to comment on these findings relative to USAID's framework on digital literacy. Each panelist will present for excuse me, about 10 minutes. So hopefully we should have plenty of time at the end for questions and discussion. And if some of you are using the Whova app, I understand the people that are moderating the ICTforAg program and the session, the conference, are going to be able to paste those into the Google or into the Zoom chat so that we can see those. So let's get started. So the reason for this topic is because spurred in part by the pandemic, everyone has been trying to provide digital training. But this risks leaving a large segment of the population behind, including a large percentage of the people that TechnoServe works with. And in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, only about a third of the population uses mobile internet. And in particular, women, rural residents, and farmers lack access to internet connections. So the question that we're trying to ask here is just how can we use digital tools to enhance training for millions of farmers who are not connected, who do not have digital tools? And based on our own experience and research, we recommend 3 evidence-based approaches that we're going to be talking about today. So first, use digital tools to train farmer trainers. Requirement is that the trainers are digitally connected and literate, and there are a number of advantages of this approach, which Seth is going to talk about from our work that we're starting in Benin Cashew. Second, augment in-person training with video and audio. The requirement here is that your trainers have to be digitally connected and have to have the proper resources in the field. So for example, a projector or speakers. And there, Ma is going to be talking about some of TechnoServe's work with one of our programs in Nigeria. And third, where farmers do have some access to technology, is to incorporate appropriate digital tools for remote and blended learning based on their access. And Giselle is going to talk about our work with coffee farmers in Latin America, where they do have access to a few more tools there. So let's just get right into it. Seth, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're doing with Benin Cashew?
Great. Thank you, Dave. Welcome everyone to this wonderful webinar. I think we're going to learn together and also see how best practices we can use to implement digital tool for the unconnected. Yes, at Benin Cashew, I will just give you an overview of the Benin Cashew project. Benin Cashew project is a USDA project to support cashew farmers in Benin. And one of our mandates was to train the farmers on best agriculture practices. And Benin Cashew has been able to do that by training over 90,000 farmers with the help of the government and CRS, that's Capital Relief Services. And in Benin, we have approximately 200,000 smallholder farmers and families. So how do we reach to these farmers with consistent training that have good standards? So at Benin Cashew, we decided to reach out to the farmers with this content. But how do we do that? We have to do that through extension workers, that is, have the trainers of trainers program. And to do that, we just released a two agronomic manual, which is one on plantation and another on nursery management. So these are contents that have been approved by both our technicians and especially the government, so that this can be used within the sector. But most people, as we are aware, will not be able to read those books. They will put it on the shelf and then that will be it. But we decided to transform that materials into a training program that can be used by the farmers trainers, like extension workers from the Ministry of Agriculture. They go out into the field to train the farmers on best agriculture practices. For example, pruning, how to clean your farm, how to make sure that you have a better yield. These trainings must be consistent. How to set up a nursery and do better grafting. So, but most of the farmers in Benin have just basic feature phones or just radio. So how do we get to them is through these extension workers. So we are currently piloting this program with making sure that we can get all these contents online on a platform where extension workers in a field with a smartphone will have access to the content. We take some courses over a period of time at his convenience. You remember when the COVID-19 hit us, most of us couldn't go out there to train our farmers, and they were let alone. But these extension workers will have those training and be able to go out in the field, either on an in-person base or through some other means to train the farmers. So what we're doing here is to make sure to empower the extension workers to be able to train consistently. Someone may ask, these extension workers, do they have access to internet? Of course, some do have, but our platform also have a mobile version where you can work offline when there is no internet. So on the field, if they want to reference something they've forgotten, they can just go on their smartphone and be able to refer to that. So it is very much important that we understand the importance of having consistent training that reach the farmers. One, what are we trying to do here? We are trying to help the farmers to get a better training that they will be able to improve their livelihood and the high quality of cashew and have value for that. And the extension workers will be able to study or take a courses at a small chunk in models. For example, he or she is very busy in the field. She may decide, okay, I will take a model every week. I'll take 2 hours of my time and just take a model. As a point, we are testing. We are in the process of testing it and piloting it for most of the extension workers. And how we're going to do that? We're looking at all the stakeholders that would be able to support it. As we pilot it, we will also look at the opportunity where this can be scaled up to other areas. which a government could take the content and just modify it for other training purposes. So this will help, one, to increase standardization within the casual sector. Two, it will also help to reduce costs of face-to-face training, which most people have to travel distance or bring all of these extension workers to one location and do training. Now, most of these extension workers won't need to travel maybe down to a central agency for training. With the access to the platform, they can stay anywhere and be able to have the training. And this training will be standardized because all the training contents that they are using is just from the agronomic manual that has been approved by the government for training. So these are some of the things we're doing to reach the unconnected, especially our farmers. You cannot reach the farmers without going through the extension workers because they will go out there to train them. They know where the plantations are located. They know what are the needs of the farmers so that one, they can get this right in their pocket and then they will be able to provide that. So, and the approach we are using in this development is a human-centered approach. We are not just sitting maybe in an office doing that. Internally, we work with our internal technical team as we have a chief agronomist that we sat with and discussed this with him. He was one of those who developed the manual to make sure that the course is consistent and to meet the needs of the farmers. And then when we pilot, we are looking at if this is piloted, we will be able to scale it up for all extension workers. And what will be the learning process for even the government? We're looking at this platform, they could replicate it for other tree crops apart from cashew because now they have learned how to do those training and that will reduce costs. So thank you, and we will have more discussion as we open a panel discussion and we give more insight on that. Thank you.
So, thanks, that's great. So just to kind of summarize, the first approach is pretty basic. So what Seth described here is that the trainers have access to smartphones and tablets. And so we're implementing train the trainer with smartphones and tablets, which leads to benefits including standardization, sustainability, reduced costs, and the ability to refresh training in the field. I'd like to go on now to our second recommendation, which is augmenting in-person field training with video and audio. And to speak more about this, we have Ma Oyeka joining us from Nigeria. Ma, do you want to turn on your, there you go. There's Ma, whoops, we lost Ma. There we go.
Hi, Dave. Hello, everyone. We're here to share our experience in the use of video and audio to train women rice farmers in northern Nigeria. So the Business Women Connect project, I'll give an overview of that and then go into details about how we were able to deploy audio visual trainings on the field. So the Business Women Connect project was implemented between 2017 and 2020. And it was set up to really empower women working in the rice value chain in northern Nigeria. So a bit of context on the culture in northern Nigeria. For many of you who might be familiar with the region, this is a part of Nigeria that is really, really conservative and extremely limits women who are interested in participating in agriculture to a particular segment of the value chain. Most women you will find in northern Nigeria operate in the processing segment of the value chain because they're able to do it most of the time from within the home or very, very close to the home. And so for a project coming in to do work in the production segment of the value chain, we had to grapple with some of these cultural norms and constantly think of ways to adapt such that we would have more women participation and active participation at that. And so what we initially started doing was setting up demonstration plots, as is usually the case on most of these agricultural interventions. So we had set up demonstration plots in each of the communities, making it easy and feasible for the women to access the plots, see how the rice is cultivated, using both their conventional techniques and then also using best practices as well. And then they're able to over time see the difference. But we wanted this knowledge to sort of like, we didn't want them, we felt if we demonstrated only on the farm, then the likelihood that they might forget is there. And so what we tried to do was share small leaflets, just detailing key aspects of the techniques, and we gave it to them in the local language. Over time, we realized, as we adapted our M&E system, we realized that many of them actually did not even read. They couldn't read the local language. And so we started to think of other creative ways to share information, vital information with them, beyond just demonstration plots. And so the idea of using audiovisuals came up. And so we started to draft a plan as to how to develop this content. We worked with an agronomist, with our rice agronomist, of course, but also incorporated a bit of communication expertise in there so that it's engaging and we're able to achieve the aim, which is really around knowledge retention and adoption of best practices for rice. And so we eventually got this, the training developed using the audiovisual tech method. And we ensured that it was a very short video, maximum 20 minutes video that covered all the key aspects of rice production. We also ensured that it was in the local language. And then we had women who were part of the project participate in the training video. So all the women in the video were actually women from those communities and were part of the project as well. And so we used portable projectors to deploy this training in the local communities, mainly because these were communities that were in the hinterlands, and so access to electricity was a problem. So we needed alternative means to be able to power the projectors. So the portable projectors came in really handy. And after a few trials in the communities, in some of the communities, we found that this was something that could actually be scaled up, especially for the farmer trainers. They found it really flexible for them. They found it was a lot more engaging. A lot of the women, because of the picture content, a lot of the women will come. They showed more interest in it. And because the training sites were really close to where they lived, it was easy for more women to attend. There was greater attention in the trainings we found compared to the regular training or on the field, or where you're just talking and there's no motion picture. A lot of the women would attend with their babies, of course, being the culture in that part of the region. Many women will come with their babies or their children, and oftentimes we found without the video, the classes were usually noisy, babies crying and children playing, but with the video, there was the attention of the children it was really captivating for them. And we found, surprisingly, a much more quieter class. And so, by and large, we found this to be really, really engaging for the women. It was easier for the trainers. The trainers would then answer questions that the women had after the video had played, and it just provided an easy way for training content to be refreshed in the memory of the beneficiaries over time, because we could play the videos over and over again and talk about and really go in depth on the topics that they found that they were interested in. And so some of the key
Emma,
recommendations.
I have a video here. Did you want me to share that?
Definitely, definitely. Yes, we will show. I would want you to show, Dave, but let me just quickly go through some of the quick recommendations, if you don't mind. Yes. So one of the recommendations that we would put forward, should other projects be interested in deploying this, is ensuring that you're able to incorporate the language and also incorporate some of your beneficiaries in this, because what we found then happened was a lot of the women saw that their peers were actually doing rice production, were actually involved in this, and that got them even much more interested in the project and in giving their best and committing their best to the project. And then we also would recommend that the videos, when you're doing this, it's in a very convenient location, and all the right elements are in place to avoid sort of like mishaps, or maybe the video not playing well, or the pictures not showing well, that sort of thing. So you need to plan your siting and your location properly ahead of the training session. So I think, Dave, you can play the video now, and I'll be happy to take on questions when the panel session is open for questions. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Ma. Ma sent me this video. This is one of the videos that they used in the field. It's 20 minutes long. I'm going to show 1 minute of it. So here we go.
Ana yin wannan layin saboda idan kika saka iri, kika yafa iri. Na ɗaya, in ciyawa ta fito ba tare da kin matsa wa irin da kika yafa ba, za ki iya takawa ki cire ciyawar. Na biyu kuma, in har ana buƙatar a saka mishi taki, to ba tare da irinki wanda kika yafa ya samu matsala ba, za a saka taki a gefe-gefe. Da fari zan yi ku gani, sai mu yi tare da ku, sai kuma in bar ku in ga kun koya. Da farko dai yanda ake zuba iri, haka za a ɗebe shi a hannu, ana sa sannu a hankali ana tafiya. Mu ICT da Technical Software mukan je ƙauyuka ne domin mu koya manoma abin da mu.
Good. So hopefully you could see and hear that. But that gives you an idea of some of the training videos that we put together. So this was a training video in local language from people showing people in the communities where the women that we were training lived. And, as Ma said, people like seeing themselves in videos. And the fascinating thing I found about this was that apart from all the other benefits, which are well supported through RCTs and research in terms of the benefits of this practice, the women and their children were more engaged in the videos than they were even when we did the training and the demonstration plots. So now I want to go on to the third recommendation. And for that, we'll have Gazelle talk about the work that we're doing with MOCA across Latin America. Gazelle, great to have you here.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to talk about the MOCA program, which is a 5-year initiative funded by the USDA and aimed at helping more than 80,000 coffee and cacao farmers in 6 countries. However, today I'm focusing on the digital tools we use to train coffee farmers in 5 of the 6 countries we work: El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua in Central America, and Peru. What digital tools do we use in MOCA and why? I will begin with why. When we began developing comprehensive remote training plans, Planes Integrales de Entrenamiento Remoto, or PIER in Spanish, in March 2020, entire communities were closed to outsiders in some of the countries we worked in. Some countries had stay-at-home orders, and we did not know how COVID would evolve. But we knew that from one day to the next, a community where we train farmers could be close to our training teams. So we wanted to develop an approach to reach as many as farmers as possible, prioritizing the same practices we will want to train when we want the training to adopt in an in-person training through different media that farmers could use regardless of their internet access. So 43% of the farmers we train have smartphones. We engage with this segment mostly via WhatsApp. For the training, we develop a script our farmer trainers can use to disseminate all the training products we create for a topic to ensure we control the messages we are trying to disseminate at scale and to reduce the time our trainers spend on sending crafting these messages. TechnoServe has its own adult accelerated learning methodology, CREATE, which we use when delivering in-person training, and we attempt to use these same practices when we developing the scripts so that our trainers can help farmers connect, reflect, and provide feedback, all important adult education best practices. So since March 2020, MOCA produced 35 short videos, now actually more over than 40 videos, 31 radio shows, 15 technical guides, and 60 posters for mostly blended training. We use the radio to reach farmers with no smartphones. However, we encourage all to listen it. Our radio program called Mi Parcelita de Oro, My Little Farm of Gold, is 30-minute long and includes technical recommendations delivered via a dramatization, interview with the specialists, and other scripted exchanges. The dramatizations include a female protagonist who others reach out to advise on how to raise their yields. Scripts are produced by radio stations in each country, which we have the potential to reach up to 50% of our farmers on average. However, we are currently negotiating with new radio stations in some of our countries where we had issues with radio frequency quality. Of the more than 38,000 coffee farmers trained by MOCA, 43% have access to smartphones, and more than 7,000, 35% females have received peers content via WhatsApp and telephone calls. We have made an effort to use appropriate digital tools and to develop training products using adult education best practice CREATE, and we have learned a lot in this process. So I will now close with some lessons learned, which hopefully can be used for others. First, developing materials on time can be challenging. Projects wanted to use C4D should plan accordingly by investing in a proper budget, which allows them to develop all blended materials. Integrating a multidisciplinary team, maybe we can use the process film tape for explaining this part of the presentation. Because as I mentioned before, integrating a multidisciplinary team is very challenging. And to develop your content, our coffee specialists prioritize the technical recommendations, which our training coordinators use to develop WhatsApp script as well as in-person training guides. And our communication team used to develop video script, radio script, training manuals, and digital posters. And then we have all the design, film, and produce process, which are again reviewed once they're finished by a technical specialist and other team members. So developing all these training products requires a lot of time. Another lesson learned is programs should also plan on investing time to build the capacity of training teams to use ICTs. In March 2020, we began to train coffee nursery operators who typically have better access to the internet than farmers via Facebook. Our nursery advisor had a wealth of knowledge and technical expertise, but no experience transmitting this online. So we had to spend a lot of time developing their capacities, and now they are experts at it. Our farmer trainers are very used to using WhatsApp, but engaging WhatsApp group members to exchange and interact is difficult and requires a lot of training, support, and coaching. Projects should also consider equipping training teams better. In a typical farmer training project, farmer trainers have smartphones, they use to enter data for the M&E system. But managing with subgroups and disseminating learning tools can be difficult to do in a small fund, which is why Technoserve Mocha recently made the decision to purchase small laptops for farmers trainers so they can better use the tools we're asking them to use. And finally, we think projects should ensure the M&E system can track the differentiate new ways of reaching and training farmers. There is a lot to share on how we produce and we use peer materials, and we hope to have the opportunity to do so in the near future in other spaces. So thank you. And I will be waiting if you have any question for us.
So thanks very much, Gazelle. And in fact, I have a video. Do you want me to share your video now?
Yes, of course.
Yes. Okay. So let's do this. Whoops. Sorry, guys. I'm having driving difficulties here. Here we go. Okay, this is one of the videos that they created to help train. In this case, this is keys for a good harvest.
En la calidad de caza, el trabajo arduo de los recolectores y trabajadores de la finca determinan la calidad del café, ya que solo si se decide seguir las mejores prácticas, cosechar frutos maduros, el procesamiento y secado cuidadoso de granos, se podrá obtener mayor calidad y por ende mejores precios.
Para determinar si un lote está listo para ser cosechado, el productor deberá tomar 100 frutos recién cortados del lote al azar, colocar los frutos sobre una mesa o un periódico, hacer grupos y contar los frutos según su tipo: verde, verde pintón, pintón, maduro pintón, maduro, sobre maduro cariado y cerezo seco. Se considera que un lote está listo para ser cortado y de buena calidad si se obtienen como mínimo 85 frutos maduros del total de 100. Una vez que se ha decidido intervenir un lote, los siguientes métodos nos ayudarán a identificar el grado de maduración ideal. Goteo de frutos maduros.
Okay, so I think you get a good idea there of the kind of the quality of the training videos that they put together. And I think the key learning here is that if you do have some of your farmers or clients that have access to technology, you can use it. And this includes a whole constellation of technologies, everything from radio to posters to texts. If people have Facebook, use that, but use what is available to your beneficiaries or the people in your programs. So I want to just summarize here. So these are the three approaches we've just seen. So Seth talked a little bit about digital tools for training farmer trainers. So this is train the trainer. You know, many of the trainers in your programs will have smartphones, use them. Secondly, Ma talked about augmenting in-person training with video and audio. People love to see themselves in film. So that's what that's about. Do it in local language with people from the areas that you're training. And third is based on farmers' access to technology. What Gazelle has done with the MOCA program is to incorporate appropriate digital tools, appropriate to the audience. And then you can see some of the clear benefits that we found in each of those programs, which are also supported by research. But now what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite Conchana to talk about comments on some of these findings relative to USAID's framework for digital literacy, and also to address the question of what are the best practices to build digital literacy with program staff and end users as agricultural training programs begin to implement some of these practices. So Conchana, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Whoops. Again, I've forgotten to point out that everything we've just talked about is in the report that Technoserve has released. And Conchana, now over to you.
Great, thank you, Dave. As Dave mentioned, my name is Conchana Stanamurthy. I'm part of USAID's digital inclusion team. which sits in USAID's Innovation, Technology, and Research Hub. So I'm going to be zooming back a little bit in my presentation to think about the three approaches that Giselle, Seth, and Ma just outlined, and putting it within the framework of digital literacy as well as USAID's digital strategy. So USAID launched its digital strategy in April of 2020. And the strategy is really a cohesive plan on how we'll adopt digital technologies and best practices throughout the agency and in our global programming and partnerships with the entire development sector. This includes other donor agencies, the private sector, governments, as well as end users or the beneficiaries of this work. The strategy's goal is to achieve and sustain open, secure, and inclusive digital ecosystems that contribute to development and humanitarian assistance outcomes and increase partner countries' self-reliance. Digital literacy is a key component of the digital strategy. Next slide, please. So when talking about digital literacy, it's always good to start with the definition, I found, since people have varying understandings of what this relatively large topic encompasses. So USAID, with some reference to UNESCO's definition, has defined digital literacy as the ability to access, manage, understand, integrate, communicate, evaluate, and create information safely and appropriately through digital devices and network technologies for participation in economic and social life. This is a pretty meaty definition, but you can think of it as encompassing two different prongs: capacity and safety. Next slide, please. Capacity refers to the technical knowledge and skills required to use a variety of digital devices and services such as mobile phones, computer, the internet, messaging and social media services, as well as audio and video tools. Safety, on the other hand, refers to the skills and awareness required to use these digital tools carefully while navigating the potential harms and cyber threats successfully. This pillar includes strategies for strengthening cyber hygiene, as well as countering mis and disinformation. Next slide, please. To help further kind of elucidate this definition, USAID refers to the European Commission developed DigComp framework that divides digital literacy into 5 key areas, and it identifies a set of competences that can help determine where along the digital literacy continuum an individual's skills might lie. Many organizations use this or similar types of competence identification. For example, TechnoServe uses profile levels to identify what type of population they may be working with, which takes into consideration levels of connectivity and access in a particular community, the digital literacy and device familiarity users may have. Next slide, please. So when thinking about our programming itself, USAID programs largely approach digital literacy through one of 2 approaches: foundational or tactical digital literacy. Foundational digital literacy activities build digital literacy skills required for economic, political, and social participation in today's world, which is really a goal in and of itself. So these activities may use formal or informal curriculum through the education sector or something else to develop digital literacy competences. Tactical digital literacy activities, on the other hand, try to help achieve other development objectives and ensure that activities are responsive to the growing relevance of digital tools and services. So a need to develop or build digital literacy among the target population develops to ensure that the digital intervention is effective, even though digital literacy itself or building that may not be the singular goal of that activity. So today, from our other panelists, most of the activities and skill building that you've heard have been focused on tactical digital literacy interventions. Though it is important in the broader context to think about intersecting these with foundational digital literacy activities as well. So I'm going to just briefly react to what each of the panelists have outlined in terms of their programming and think a little bit about the digital literacy considerations they made in each activity. So with Seth's activity based in West Africa on cashew farmer training, as discussed earlier, the activity really utilizes a train the trainer model. Those trainers receive their lessons through a smartphone-based learning platform and then subsequently use that knowledge to train beneficiaries on different agricultural practices. Now, this doesn't require digital literacy training necessarily for the ultimate beneficiaries or farmers themselves, but it was really important for the trainers in ensuring that they're able to access the information, understand how to use it on their digital device, and saving that information safely and practicing good cyber hygiene and having good smartphone literacy. On the financial literacy training in Nigeria that Ma talked about, that activity really focused on training women on financial literacy, agribusiness, and decision making. It utilized a blended digital approach of using in-person training, but also used pre-recorded video content that intermediaries would then play for women at community centers and meeting spots. As Ma discussed, they had to make a key digital literacy switch when they realized that not everybody they were working with had traditional literacy. So trying to reach that group through a smartphone-based intervention that was just an app or some other intervention that required them to read may not have been quite as effective. But then pivoting over to an idea where they were able to display the videos delivered in local language and content was extremely smart and managed to reach that population where they're at. I'll talk about this in a few minutes when I talk about additional resources. But a key framework we also refer to are the principles for digital development, which are really overall best practices for how to integrate best practices into development programming when you're using a digital intervention. And one key principle of that is design with the user. You need to understand where your user is at, meet them there, and work together to design the intervention. And that's a great example of how they pivoted, understood their users, and worked together to kind of shift the intervention. You even had a little bit more buy-in by having some of the women themselves learn how to operate the technology, and while they weren't formal trainers, helped kind of display those videos in their community. Then going to Giselle's activity on working with coffee farmers in Latin America. Now, this activity reached users that were at a slightly different level than the earlier two activities. More of the farmers that they were working with had access to smartphones, were already using digital tools for personal or professional needs, using communication platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook. So this intervention again met the users where they were at, already using these technologies, having access to these devices, and tried to integrate a digital approach within that understanding. So this is a really effective technique because, again, the moderators and the hosts of this training were able to communicate with the farmers via WhatsApp and Facebook and share best practices and things like that. However, I will note that on this type of activity, it's again really important to think about the safety component of digital literacy and take that into consideration. So the operators and the moderators of the group had to be careful to ensure that people weren't sharing certain types of personal information on these platforms, as their data may be collected or potentially not as secure. Some media literacy training on this type of intervention could also be useful as an additional, tactical programming consideration. Because again, while the information that's shared as part of the training module itself in this programming may be verified and strong information, as we know, there is a lot of misinformation that can flow through WhatsApp and Facebook And it's critical that the trainers or intermediaries are thinking about how the users are engaging with these platforms and are thinking critically about the information that's shared within them. Just going to our last slide on additional resources, just wanted to share a couple of different resources that we refer to in addition to the DigComp framework, which I discussed earlier. The principles for digital development, as I mentioned briefly, promote good digital programs with strong digital literacy components. Again, like a key principle is meet the user where they're at, design with the user, don't bring in new technology where it won't be useful, and design with these principles in mind. A couple of other resources just for reference later is USAID a couple of years ago produced a toolkit on integrating digital financial services into agricultural programming. And it's a good general resource for how to think about the steps for doing that. And lastly, I pointed to USAID's digital strategy. USAID is also producing a primer on digital literacy that will really kind of go through a lot of the foundational principles I've outlined in this presentation. And it will also provide some tangible guidance that is sectoral specific. So there's a pretty robust section on the agricultural sector. So please look out for it in usaid.gov in the upcoming weeks. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Conchita. And if you have questions for Conchita, here's your contact information. And I think you can also get this in the Whova app. And now what I'd like to do is I'd like to open it up to some questions. Please type your questions into the chat or type it into the Whova app, and that will get communicated to us. But we have one, let's see, question. I'm from Bauchi, and has your program come to Bauchi, and what's your success story? Let's see, I don't know where Bauchi is actually. My biography or my geography is not that strong, but to my knowledge, I don't think any of these programs are operational in Bauchi. Let's see, second question. This is a question for Ma. Can you talk about how your program also made use of audio platforms? And what do you see as the benefits of audio versus video? So Ma, if you want to unmute and bring yourself back.
Yeah. So Bauchi is in northern Nigeria. And maybe I should have been a bit more specific, but I didn't want to go into the details because perhaps like you did, not many people will know the region that well. So we implemented Business Women Connect in Kaduna in the last year, but mainly we were in Kano and Jigawa throughout the duration of the project. So we didn't work in Bauchi, unfortunately. And then as to audios, yes, we did use audio eventually. We partnered with Talking Books to use audio. And that was mainly because we were having issues with really trying to get the women to understand content around cooperative strengthening, particularly the record keeping bit of it. And we eventually used audio, but really towards at the tail end of the project, we had left. We sort of like left the audio devices with the women, just so that they could on their own go over that particular model and really grasp the content. And hopefully that would help them to strengthen their groups better, strengthen their businesses and their cooperatives. But for the purpose of this meeting, maybe because I mentioned audio visual, it might have been confusing, but it's basically just videos. So PowerPoint presentation, using the projectors rather to show using videos, the training content for mainly good agronomic practice in rice production. Yeah.
But Ma, if I can clarify, one important factor was actually having the audio be in the local language, right?
Sorry, say that again, Dave.
Yeah, one important aspect of your training was having the audio for the video. In other words, what they were saying was in the local language.
Exactly. Exactly. It was in the local language, yes.
Yeah. One thing I will comment on that we haven't started yet, but we're considering piloting in a few different areas, is having local language audio accompanying large graphics that would be used in the field. And the benefit there is you can have the same training. In some countries, you might have 10 or more different local languages. But you can record the audio of the training that might normally just be done in French or Portuguese or English. You can do that in the local languages, and you can have multiple different versions of that depending on the group that you're presenting to, and just have that accompanying the graphics that show the good agricultural practice that you're trying to present. So let's see, I have a question here from Charles. Interesting work, MOCA. Do farmers contribute to the design of contents or scripts for the radio, video, and in-person training? So Gazelle, that's for you.
I'm not sure if I got the question, if I'm so clear about the question.
So I think the question is, so you put together, let me actually, I'm gonna move around.
Mm-hmm.
Oops, here, I'm gonna move around, go back to the chart that you had. Here we are. So Gazelle, your team, the MOCA team, developed a lot of training materials, what I would call a content constellation that's distributed across multiple different channels. And so as I understand the question is, what role did farmers have in developing the content that got fed into this program?
Okay. First of all, we with the M&E team, we try to find out what is the educational level our farmers has, and trying to understand how friendly our materials must be tailored. Then once we started with the producing with the videos and the radio show and the manuals as well, and the posters we share, we always have like this focus group, but also we call farmers, the M&E program, the M&E team call people back and ask them about how the quality is, how easily it was for them to get them to the message, whether this content is useful for them. And we receive this feedback from farmers in order to adapt it. For example, at the beginning when we started producing the videos, we used to have like a big video of 5 to 7 minutes for every topic we discussed, like for example, nutrition or harvest. We had this long video, but then we identified that farmers receive better because of their feedback. We have received short videos of like 2 to 3 minutes or even less, where we discuss a specific topic for the one that we talk about. For example, we don't talk about nutrition in general in coffee, but now we have a video for nutrition for yields and in a nursery stage, and then we have this video for the plants in a stage of producing. So this is very, very, very important for us to receiving feedback, and we are doing this all the time. We have different telephone calls and from the M&E team, and they give us this feedback back, and we use it to adapt the content. And this is how, for example, yeah.
Yeah, so I think, the simple answer here, Charles, is that with the MOCA program and with other programs, we develop content and then we get feedback. And so it's an iterative development process. This kind of shows one way, but I think what Giselle described is more of a loop. And just an example of the length, that's not just a Latin American phenomenon that short videos are better. I think in fact, in one of our programs in Kenya, we found that people stop watching videos after 83 seconds. Okay. So, our target for content like this is definitely less than 3 minutes. Let's see, I have another question here from Sophie. Where can we find more information on the CREATE learning methodology? So this is what Giselle described, and I think this is a TechnoServe developed methodology, is it not?
Yeah, CREATE, but
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
So I will just say, I don't know that we actually have information available publicly on this, but we can certainly. I think the point, the C in CREATE is for connect. And I think the whole starting point of this is that before you start building capacity or training people on a new methodology, you need to connect with them so they understand why it's important to their lives. And that's the basis of the CREATE methodology. But note taken, we'll try to get some material out on CREATE. Let's see, question from Annie. Ma, do the farmers have discussions around the videos, audios after watching or listening to them? Have you recorded any feedback? Please share what farmers are saying about this. Ma, do you want to take yourself off mute and share your video or your audio and your video?
Sure. Oh yeah, I forgot about the video. Sure. Yes, there was interaction that would take place after watching the video. Many of the women would express, just surprise or, just how they feel encouraged that other women like themselves are doing this, and how that really spurs them on to continue what they're doing. And then other times it was more around questions, technical questions around the particular topic of interest at the time. But yes, we would collect feedback, and unlike the MOCA project, the feedback was usually live and in the classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would, that's actually a very perceptive question. And there's been quite a lot of academic research on this topics, and to the point where they actually have a name for it. So it's called participative video or participative video training. And the idea is that you get the most benefit if you show a video and then you have a discussion about the video. Or you share an audio and you have a discussion about the audio. I would recommend going to the body of research that's been curated by Agriculture in the Digital Age. It's a great body of research that we've used, and they have a lot of work by FRI, by Digital Green and others on the benefits of having discussions with training groups after showing videos. But it is very, very powerful in terms of encouraging practice adoption and also creating a standard focus for the concepts that you're training on. Let's see, question from Martin. Please, Giselle, could you tell us how you train your team on ICT?
Okay, so we started first with the training coordinators, because this training coordinator has a team of other people that are in the field, which are the farmer trainers. So we started, we began with the training coordinators on how to use the WhatsApp and how would be like the best practice for writing a WhatsApp message. Then we also needed to train the team on how to use the Drive. It might seem quite simple for some people, but it is not for everyone. Using the Drive is not just like a daily basic tool for everyone. So we started from the how to write a good message for WhatsApp. how to use the drive where you can find the material. So we develop like a library content where they can have access, a quick access for all the links where we have all these content on our drive. And then we had also these training sessions with farmer trainers. One decision we made is using WhatsApp Business. And why do we use WhatsApp Business? Because at WhatsApp Business, we can have all this content by topic, in different chapters, in different folders. So if you're a farmer and you participate in this group, you can also have permanent access to the content through the different folders the farmers trainer has on their cell phones, on their profile. So it was a long process, and I may say that we needed to do this across all staff, and maybe at the beginning it was not so easy because there is a typical way or person-to-person training that we have been doing this for many years. And then using this tool, not everyone was so engaged on this, but once people started to send the materials and interacting in the groups, the message they have received from farmers was, oh, this is great because I can watch this video, I can read this content anytime that I have free. If I have a free time, I can focus on this and I can, okay, maybe I went to the in-person training or I missed the in-person training, but I can watch the video, stop the video, go back in the video until I get completely clear on how to do this best practice. And then they receive a quick answer if they have any questions on the WhatsApp group. So we had received very, very positive feedback from this group. And then, yeah, another point that is very important for us is safety, as mentioned it before. And we try to establish some rules on how do we interact on these WhatsApp groups and the Facebook group. We use a Facebook group with a specific profile, which is learning groups. And in these learning groups, these are private groups. We don't use information, and we have very clear recommendations that we only use these groups to discuss the topics related to trainings. Another kind of, we're very, in a very polite way, we can tell the farmers that if we are going in some other topics, we need to go back to the training topics. And we try to focus on safety as well.
That's great. And as I recall, we didn't use an external organization to do the training for MOCA. I think we kind of figured it out and did our own training, right? So just that's a good question though, right? If you're using digital tools to train your own staff, don't assume that your own staff knows how to use those tools, okay? And even if they know how to use the tool, they may not necessarily, I mean, even if they physically know how to use WhatsApp, they may not necessarily know how to use WhatsApp to manage a group of people that you're trying to train using a WhatsApp group. So there was a lot that we did there to make those training groups using digital technologies effective. Because we hire people that know agricultural practices, not necessarily people that are know social media. Good. I want to go to. By the way, keep typing in your questions. We have another question here, but I want to go to Concha. You mentioned kind of some of the digital principles, and I want to talk a little bit about those. If you're not familiar with the digital, let's see if I can go down to the digital principles here. Concha, can you just explain what some of these principles are and how they relate to some of this work?
Yeah, definitely. So as you can see from the slide Dave is presenting, those 6 boxes there represent the 6 main principles of the digital principles. So it's really, these were developed a few years ago, back when, ICT4E became really exciting, and using digital technologies for development became something people became really excited about. But the principles are really meant to, to provide a framing. While digital technology can be useful as an intervention or as training or whatever it may be, you need to really think critically about how to actually integrate digital technology into programming. So the first principle is really design with the user. So you really need to think about the people that you're designing for through conversation or observation or co-creation. As you can see from all of the 3 projects highlighted, the activity managers really iterated with the participants, responded to their needs, and met them through an intervention that was useful for them. The second principle to highlight is understanding the existing ecosystem. So you again need to start considering the structures and need that exist in each country, region, or community, and design for digital intervention within that ecosystem. So again, looking at these programs, the women that Ma was working with in Northern Nigeria are really different population, and the ecosystem that they operate within is really different from the coffee farmers in Latin America. And as a result, those interventions were pretty different. The other principle is design for scale. So again, whenever you're thinking about reaching a population and using a digital intervention, you want to think about how can this actually be used beyond this particular intervention? What are the principles that kind of transcend, and how do you use this with the larger population? And I think TechnoServe has sort of done that through like distilling the lessons that they've learned from each user group and digital ecosystem that they're working within to kind of come up with these principles that can be used in different interventions. And then, build for sustainability. Again, that's the question of how do you make sure these programs are sustaining, these digital tools continue to be useful, and then maximize long-term impact. And then the second last principle is be data-driven. So making sure that information is available to people when they need it, and that data or lessons learned are actually being used to inform action or pivots if need be. And then finally, the last principle is using open standards, data, open source, open innovation. This is just really for the broader digital development community. That kind of open approach can help increase collaboration, avoid duplication of work. So again, I think TechnoServe has kind of tried to encompass that by putting together that report, their best practices and lessons learned through these 3 digital interventions.
Yeah, thanks, Kanchan. I think that's a good overview. I would recommend just looking at principles for digital development. I think it's digitalprinciples.org is the website. If you're an NGO and you're not a signatory endorsing them, look into it, because they're kind of good common sense principles that apply regardless of what technology you use. A couple of things I just want to point out. One is just the understanding of the existing ecosystem. Everything that we do is based on user profiles of the end users. And there's a blog post that I did a year or so ago about how we think about user profiles. Just look at, user profile blog, TechnoServe, and you'll find that. And then the other thing is designing, building for sustainability. I think we find that if you do things on platforms like Seth was talking about, you actually have a set of content that you can hand off when the program ends. Let's see. We have another, thanks, Kanchan, I see, put in the digital principles into the chat. That's great. Let's see, question from Isaac. Are programs using television in agricultural training? I think I will answer that just because I'm familiar from the research. Definitely in East Africa, absolutely. There's a few of them that are almost like reality shows that are trying to get young people interested in farming. I think there's been Kenya and Ethiopia, I believe, have used television. But you're going to limit your audience to people with televisions and electricity, right? So it doesn't always work. One other point, one of my favorite interventions that TechnoCert did was a team in Mexico was training strawberry farmers. And they figured out that the strawberry farmers did not have internet. They often did not have phone, but they did have televisions with DVD players. And so what they did is they did a survey of different groups of strawberry farmers, and they were able to burn CDs with short 2 to 3 minute videos of agronomic practices that were of interest to those strawberry farmers in specific areas. And they delivered those by motorbike. And then they were able to pop them into their DVD player, even though they did not have cell phones or smartphones. They would use those for watching movies that they had on CD. So the answer to your question is yes, but sometimes in different forms. Let's see. Any other questions? Question from AJ, how do you measure the efficacy of trainings using ICT? Is there an M&E mechanism? So I would say at this point, we have monitoring and evaluation for some programs, but not all. I think Gazelle for MOCA, you were just kind of in the middle of the program and you're starting your monitoring evaluation. And trying to get cohorts that you can measure against each other with and without ICT. What TechnoServe has relied on is actually the academic research that supports those findings. So if I go back up here and I go to the if I go back up to the recommendations, here we are. Here, these recommendations, all of these were supported by academic research. So in this case, we are relying on the academic research of others, leveraging that agriculture in the digital age study and others. Let's see, question from Laura. I would like some advice on how to best engage the farmers who are already involved in WhatsApp farmer groups. So let's see, Gazelle, why don't you tackle that one?
Okay, yeah. One of the things that we have identified for people to want and need to be in the WhatsApp groups is trying to tailor very light materials. I mean, if you have short, it's not just the short videos, but with a low weight, those people will prefer to participate. And we have seen that before, because when we have the long videos, as big as the videos is, and if you may have a smartphone, but it doesn't necessarily is a smartphone with a big capacity of saving content, like photos and videos and manuals. So produce content that it doesn't have a big weight, and that it will not occupy a lot of space in the memories of the cell phone for the people. This is something that they are they really appreciate. The other thing that we try to do is when we have the in-person training, we try to, our farming trainers explain them the benefits that they will receive for being participating on this, because they will be receiving notifications more efficiently of the in-person training, but as well, they will also explain them how the weekly content they will receive will support the in-person trainings and how they can review all this content anytime. The other good thing of being participating in the WhatsApp group they have identified is the quick answer, because if they are not participating at the WhatsApp group, they will have to wait until they receive the in-training person in order to receive an answer of any kind of doubt that they have for the training. But instead of it, if they are in the WhatsApp group, they can receive a quick answer from the farming trainers. And the other thing that they really appreciate is the sharing with other farmers as well. Sharing their knowledge, sharing their practices, discovering how other people implement some best practice, and the result, the best practice they have been implementing have been impacting a better production of coffee. It's impacting in the yields. It's something that they really appreciate. Oh, I can see Manuel is doing this and it's doing so well, and his yield it's improving in quality or producing. This is something that they really appreciate, to see how others also receive benefits from trainings.
Yeah, I think if you look at the report that we mentioned here, so this little report here, there's some good ideas. So I think your question is, look, how do we engage with farmers who are already maybe looking at other resources? So Gazelle made the point, if your content is really good, they'll switch channels, okay? But the other thing is digital content has to be engaging. Okay, so some of the things that Gazelle mentioned, if you have a coordinator of one of these groups and they're responsive and the interaction is personal and they understand how it's going to help them, they'll switch to your group, okay? There was one other question a while back from Martin. Do you use a professional videographer for your video shooting? I'll answer that one. And the answer is yes and no, okay? So in cases like, in Gazelle, those videos that I showed, those are professionally produced, right? And they use local producers. And in the case of Latin America, they're producing the different videos for the different geographies, for the different accents, for the different people in those areas. They are local. But I think if you notice the other one that I shared, let's go up to it. Okay, it's this. Okay, so this video is, we shot this ourselves. Okay, and yeah, I think you'd find that you can do quite well using an iPhone. And so one thing that we did is we trained our teams how to do video shoots and editing with an iPhone. And my recommendation is to test it cheaply before you produce it. So I think, one of the things they did, I know in Mocha, is they created, they built their own content before they outsourced it, and then they sort of figured out how to do that economically. Let's see. Isaac, I think we've got time for one or two more questions. With the proliferation of social media, Facebook, WhatsApp, how can we leverage these platforms to provide education to farmers? That's kind of what, that's really what Gazelle is doing with the MOCA program, is they're using all of those. And I would say, I don't think they've chosen one. They use the platform that's most convenient to users, which may vary by country, okay? Let's see, another comment by Isaac, another resource that's often overlooked is the diaspora. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. These groups can sometimes pay for training or buy laptops or tablets. I would say yes, but I would say, look, if you're, our point here is that you don't have to have farmers with digital technology in order to use digital technology to benefit farmers. In some cases, you can do it indirectly. Are there any gender-based challenges around trainings on ICT? Ma, why don't you address that one? If you can bring yourself back into the discussion here. how do you address gender-based challenges? And specifically because the program, the Business Women Connect program, was for women.
So I guess it would depend on the demography of women that you're working with. In the case of Business Women Connect, these were women that really did not have any, I would say maybe just about 2 out of 10 of them had access to mobile phones. And so, you know, you ask your question, what can you do with that? They're missing out on so much, you know, information that will be useful to their agribusiness, right? And so for us, you know, it was a no-brainer, the fact that we needed to be able to deploy this, deploy information, you know, using the channel that we did eventually. So using the audio visuals and using the recordings, the audio recordings as well for the different models. But because one needs to be cognizant of their context, it was a patriarchal society, and it was important for us to also carry the men along. Otherwise, you run the risk of unintended consequences that are negative for your program, and you know that will just stifle the good work that you're trying to do. So we had to carry the men along. It's important that you consider some of these nuances and factors, you know, depending on where you're working. And for that, sometimes what we did was we would deploy, because it was MP3 type of video that we developed, we would deploy these videos on their phones. So many of the men had phones, they had their smartphones. And so we would share the videos with them as well. Many of them had rice farms and were interested in the knowledge that we are passing across to their wives or their sisters. And so we would share the videos with them. We would encourage them to watch the videos together with their wives. And we did this in the hope that because the wives, the women are getting information, technical information on production, they're able to over time see their women as also authorities on this subject matter and hopefully recognize them for that. And so take their input, value their input, and begin to see them as partners, is basically. We saw this happen. Oh, sorry, Dave.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. I wanted to point out just maybe the obvious, which is that in the videos that Ma did for the program, it's women training women. It's a video of women training women to be used to train women.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, in fact, the whole program was designed to overcome some of these challenges. Women can't get to a demonstration park because it's too far, it's inconvenient. Well, great. That's actually the reason that you developed the video method, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I would encourage, you know, there are a lot of problems with using technology, but you can also look at it as a solution. And so, but you have to be a little bit creative about how you use it, because otherwise, absolutely, you're going to disadvantage women who don't have access to the technology. Even if the family has a smartphone, they're not going to be the one that's carrying it around all day.
Dave, could I add a point to that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Ma, for going through that. I think this really, like what we refer to it at USAID as the gender digital divide. It's, you know, despite, you know, aside from issues of availability or affordability or access of devices and connectivity in a community, we often find that in South Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, other regions of the world, that women often have less access to technology than men in general. And it's not just gender, there are other marginalized and indigenous communities that are also, you know, subject to this digital divide. But gender is one of the most prolific ones, right? Because women are 50% of the population. So another program that USAID has run over the past couple of years is called the Women Connect Challenge, which tries to look at the underlying social norms or the reasons for which women are being kept offline and tries to address those challenges. Like Ma was saying, I think, bringing men into the conversation and showing what is actually happening in a particular training or intervention is really key. Another project that Women Connected that I think was really useful was trying to promote women network engineers. So in communities that are unconnected, you can build out community networks, and people from within the community can actually become those engineers and help build up that infrastructure and maintain it. So by enabling these women to be the leaders and the ones who are actually bringing connectivity into their areas, they were able to not only demonstrate their value or their ability to take on certain challenges beyond like the house or whatever it may be, but they were also, leaders and able to educate others as well. But this is a constant challenge, I think, and I think all activities need to kind of take that in mind when you're doing these digital interventions. And I think what Ma was outlining was really key.
Yep. So there's one last question here. Seth, I'm going to give this one to you. And if you could give just a 30-second response to a complicated question, that would be great. How is onboarding and training of field agents different from other capacity building? So you're training a team of field agents, which is what you're piloting. How is that different from training doing other capacity building? And let me frame it a little bit. So how would you do it normally? And how do you do it if you have this new method that you're beginning to think about here?
Yeah, thank you, Dave. One onboarding is very important for the success of the student. Now, with field agents, especially like extended workers, these are technical people, and most of the time they don't have much time. They are all in the field. So first, you have to get an orientation where they already have smartphones. You get them to understand that this is not going to take much of their time. Wherever they are, they can have access to the training materials. And the second motivation is what we also trying to look at with the government is to have a certification that will motivate them to be thinking about, oh, okay, I don't just going to waste my time, but at the end, maybe this certification could be used for promotion, for pay raise, or for other big opportunities within the sector. Now, with the normal onboarding process, it's just you are just training because you want to train a group of people. But now the training here is specific, and the agents have to retrain the farmers. So in that process, they are learning first to go and learn and to go and teach. So that makes this different. So I hope I answer your question.
I think maybe to summarize, because Seth and I have worked together, there's going to be a bit of in-person orientation, okay? And you can't just immediately throw people online. You have to, so there's a bit of in-person orientation. It's kind of a hybrid model. And then you have some online training. And then there's this additional carrot that Seth and his team are starting to think about, which is working with the government to tie in a certification program that would come with it. So I just want to thank our panelists. So Gazelle coming to us from Nicaragua, Concha coming to us, I believe, from Washington, DC, Seth from Benin in West Africa, and Ma coming to us from Nigeria. Thank you all for your time. I really appreciate sharing your time with us this afternoon. If you have more questions, look at some of the resources that Concha shared, look at the report that we put together, and of course, look at other resources on our websites. And also, thanks to ICTforAg and the team that put this together. And I'd like to direct the audience to a feedback poll that the team has opened on Whova. And it'll just take you a minute to provide feedback and let the organizers know whether this was useful. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a great afternoon, evening.